Joe Simonson is here, senior investigative reporter for the Washington Free Beacon and a lover of McDonald's French fries. Sir, good to have you with us.
Vince, how are we?
I'm doing great. What was that like being there with President Trump as he worked the drive-thru at a McDonald's?
It was pretty surreal. But I've seen President Trump at a lot of rallies and a lot of events, but I've never seen him glow like he was at working that drive-thru. I mean, just pure happiness. He was pure bliss.
Yeah, he seemed like he was in his element. I mean, not just being at a McDonald's, but I think being able to mix it up with voters right there in this unusual setting for a presidential candidate. He did seem like he was at least from where I'm sitting, deriving some enjoyment out of it.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of that just came from the fact that it was kind of the raw retail politics. You know, he didn't have to talk about policy. He didn't have to talk about the economy, the border, not because he doesn't like talking about those things, but it was almost like a reprieve, right? You know, it was like, oh, I can just kind of just talk to normal people and then just say like, hey, like, you like cheeseburgers? Yeah, me too. You know, stuff like that.
Well, you know, it's funny too. It's like it hits the sweet spot of President Trump's interests, right? Because it's McDonald's, it's talking to Trump supporters, mixing it up with people, you know, kind of proving his ability in retail politics, and also it's trolling Kamala Harris, which I think if you add all of that up, that Venn diagram equals perfect enjoyment for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
So talk to me about Kamala Harris and her career at McDonald's as you understand it, Joe.
Well, I'm not going to go as far as the President Trump says and say she never worked there, but there's just not a whole lot of evidence that she did. And so me and my colleagues at the Washington Free Beacon broke this story open in August. And what we did basically is we went through every single news story ever written about her since she entered politics. We went through her 2 books. We went through her official biography. We went through her various campaign statements about her time there, and we just couldn't find any evidence that she ever worked there. And what really, and this gets lost a lot in the media, I think, and this is more than anything else the most damning part of her story about her time there, is that the reason we started looking into this wasn't because Kamala Harris said, I worked at McDonald's. The reason we started looking into it is because her campaign said she paid her way through college working there. And that showed up in her super PAC ads. That showed up in statements from her campaign staff. I was at the DNC after our story came out, and at a closed-door volunteer meeting, the campaign staff was instructing Harris supporters to tell other voters that she paid her way through college working there. This is a core message of her campaign.
Yes, this is her origin story. This is Peter Parker being bit by the spider. This is how she became who she is now. Yeah.
And so we were like, well, hold on a second. There's absolutely no way, for a variety of reasons, some of which aren't particularly interesting, that she paid her way through college working there. And so when we reached out to the Harris campaign and said, well, no, come on, really? They went to Politico that same day and said, oh my gosh, oops. She never paid her way through college working at McDonald's. She just worked there one summer. And so once the story changed so dramatically, we saw that this needed to be investigated a little bit more. And that's when we started combing through her books. That's when we started combing through all these articles about her.
Yeah.
That's when I called her biographer, her official biographer, who said, I've never heard of this before. We got her resumes, we got her job applications, again, for a government job that asked for all employment and made her sign attesting that she didn't omit anything. There's just no reference to it.
So wait, you said, I'm sorry, can I dwell on that point for a moment? You said you spoke to her official biographer. This would be, when you say official, this is the authorized biography. This is the type of person who was granted access to her life in order to write about it?
Correct. The only biography written about Kamala Harris was written by this veteran California journalists who've been following her in San Francisco, and then when she was Attorney General in Sacramento, and then followed her Senate career. So this guy is like one of the top California reporters in the state, or one of the top reporters in the state. And I asked him straight up, I said, hey, like, this isn't in your book. And why? Like, have you just never heard this before? And he told me. He said, I was not familiar with that.
Okay, so if she worked there while she was in college, presumably that would have been at Howard University, right?
Yes. Well, this is why now it was a summer job. It was a summer job, allegedly, a summer job after her freshman year. So it was back in California.
I see.
And they said it was on Alameda McDonald's. She either spent her time in she spent her time in Berkeley with her mother, or in Palo Alto with her father during those years.
Now, has she ever been able to direct people to the street address of where that McDonald's is or was?
No.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So they're not giving you any details there. Do we know the terms of her departure from this McDonald's job? Was she fired, or did she leave on her own steam?
We have no idea how long she worked there. She could have, and frankly, maybe she worked there for a week. Maybe she worked there for 2 weeks and didn't like it. I wouldn't necessarily blame her. I mean, it's a hard job, but they won't provide any details whatsoever.
Yeah, that makes you suspicious, doesn't it? So if they don't give you anything, why do we have more photos of Donald Trump working at McDonald's than Kamala Harris?
It's a great question, and I will say that ever since our story came out, she has dropped it from her campaign stump speeches. As you said, this was her origin story. Bill Clinton is talking about it at the DNC. Other speakers are talking about it at the DNC. When it's her turn to give her big sort of coming out party to the nation,
yes.
She omits that detail completely, and I firmly believe it's because of our reporting.
Oh, so she may have to remove that from the rotation, and maybe she already did. But like in terms of just like being a normal person, so we have to remove McDonald's. What about going to high school in Canada? Does that make her like kind of a normal American?
It's even worse than that, and people never talk about it. She actually spent a year of college in Canada.
Oh. I didn't realize that. Was that a foreign exchange deal, or was she going to a Canadian college?
No, she was enrolled for 1 year at a university in Montreal, and then it was very strange. Then she transferred to Howard and did 4 years at Howard.
Oh, interesting. And so, but we don't know which college years she's referring to when she says she paid her way through with her McDonald's summer job.
Well, we know that, it would have been her Howard years, but now the story is that she worked the summer after her freshman year of Howard at McDonald's.
Okay. All right.
Hard to keep track of.
So let me get to the New York Times coverage of all of this today. So it sounds like what you've done is what we used to call reporting. This is where you try and dig up information and then you produce for the public what you've learned. The New York Times today is saying the following about Trump's visit to this McDonald's in Pennsylvania. They say the visit married his two fixations, his well-documented affection for fast food, McDonald's in particular, and a more recent pattern of accusing Vice President Kamala Harris without evidence of lying about a summer job working at a McDonald's. Ms. Harris's campaign said she worked at a McDonald's in Alameda, California in 1983 during the summer after her freshman year at Howard University. A friend of Ms. Harris's recently backed up that account, telling the New York Times that the vice president's mother, who died in 2009, had told her about the summer job years ago. McDonald's representatives have ignored media requests for information. So if I'm reading this correctly, the New York Times is accusing Trump of lacking evidence to say that Kamala Harris didn't work there, but they're not accusing Kamala Harris of lacking evidence to say that she did.
No, and I want to back up a second. The New York Times had on the original story, I think it came out Saturday, on where they conclude decisively that Trump is lying about Harris not working at McDonald's. And I want to be clear also that we in our reporting never said she never worked there. We have raised a lot of questions about it. And the New York Times' response on Saturday was, and I'm not exaggerating, to call us birthers, as in the people who denied that President Barack Obama was born in this country. And their evidence to smear us as birthers. The New York Times and their 6 reporters was a Canadian childhood friend of Harris. I'm not making this up. They knew each other in Canada. Says, oh, I remember decades later, I remember her mother, who is now dead, Kamala Harris's mother, mentioning this to me once, but I don't think Kamala Harris and I ever actually discussed it. And from that, they say that it's decisively proven that Harris worked at McDonald's. We at the Free Beacon, who have all this evidence about all these inconsistencies, the changing stories, we're the ones who are birthers and conspiracy theorists. Because, again, there's a woman. It's like my girlfriend goes to another school. There's a woman who lives in Canada who knows about Harris's summer job in California after she left the country because her dead mother mentioned it.
You know, this sounds like Canadian foreign election meddling is what it sounds like. And the New York Times is colluding with Canada to try and steal the election, Joe Simonson. And
DHS really should be paying more attention.
And they're besmirching your reporting. Did the New York Times even bring up your reporting at all? Did they mention it?
They did. They the Conservative Free Beacon, again, they call us birthers in their
Oh,
feed.
okay. I don't see that's why I don't see you in the current iteration of the story. They must have they edited you out.
It was a story. It was on yesterday. Listen, it's not about us. It's not important. The thing is that the New York Times' standard for debunking Trump's claims here is a woman who knew Harris in Canada when they were in high school, who says her dead mother mentioned this to me in 2006.
That's an unimpeachable chain of custody. That all of that information.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Am I correct in saying that they came up with the term burgerism to refer to you?
Yes, burgerism.
I got to be
later
honest.
on Sunday, they explicitly say just like birtherism, comma, blah, 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 blah.
That's honestly, that's one of the funniest things the New York Times has ever done. That's maybe the single funny thing they've ever done. That's a good name. I like that.
It took 6 of them.
It took 6
of them to pick that up.
6 reporters. Joe Simonson, as always, doing real reporting. Thank you, sir, from the Washington Free Beacon.